Let's take you back to one of our other top stories now. Police Minister Bheki Cele says the first 3 months of the year have unfortunately seen an increase in crime. Over 6,000 people were killed during the first 3 months of the year, and close on 14,000 sexual offences were reported to police. Cele released the crime stats for the first quarter of 2022 this morning. For more reaction on the latest crime stats, we're joined by the Institute for Security Studies, Lizette Lancaster. Thank you very much, Lizette, for your time here on All Angles. Now, firstly, I just want to know your initial reaction. This huge increase when it comes to, violent crime. Did you expect this?
The previous quarterly crime stats gave us an indication that this might be the case. We saw quite substantial increases in the previous ones. It dropped a bit to only, well, I say only, but 9% in the previous quarter three for September to December, also, sorry, October to December. But this is quite significant. I mean, we're looking at over 22% increase just in murder.
Just in murder alone. I mean, Lizette, I was looking at and I was speaking to a criminologist a little earlier on the show, and he actually broke it down a little further for me when it comes to murder. He says it shows a 37% increase with child murder. This week was Child Protection Week. Are we just a country that doesn't care about our children?
According to these crime statistics, 5% of murders are our children under 18. So it is very concerning. Over 300 children were murdered between January and March this year. And that's out of the over 6,000 murders that were reported. So 5% is significant in any country, because normally, we see interpersonal violence, adults, and group violence that drive murder. But more than 300 children, that's very concerning.
It is very concerning. And, I know that they only started to recently share with the public the statistics when it comes to kidnapping. But that, too, is quite scary, especially when you think of the fact that kidnapping can also lead to murder.
Exactly. Now, most kidnappings, as the minister pointed out, are linked to carjackings. But we know from recent high-profile cases that it's very often syndicates that kidnap grown-ups. It's not normally children. Some of the cases we do see are actually that involve children are actually quite rare. It is still mostly adults that are kidnapped during carjackings or other armed robberies in order to get access to their money and their funds in their bank accounts. But we are seeing syndicates and trafficking syndicates looking, exploiting foreign shopkeepers, foreign laborers, and all sorts of illicit dealings that are also now playing a role in the increases in kidnappings.
Now, Lizette, the top 30 police stations where bad crimes are reported are mostly situated in KZN, the Eastern Cape, the Western Cape and Gauteng. The minister today telling Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Police that he'll be adding about 10,000 police officers currently on training, right? Will that assist us with our security in the country, or will it not be useful if, for instance, these police officers are not trained adequately?
Training is imperative. It's not about having more boots on the ground, but it's having boots on the ground where it matters, at the times it matters, in the places it matters, and addressing the types of crime that drive, for instance, the violent crimes, such as the armed robberies. You need to be at the place where these happen. For instance, street robberies happen, say, Friday nights when people have their wages in their on them when they go home. Where are the police members during those times? So it is about getting plans together for each area, involving the communities, grassroots organizations, research organizations, and other government departments. If it's because the people are particularly vulnerable because it's overgrown, the areas are overgrown and there's no street lighting, then you need to involve the cities or the metros or the municipalities. So it's a whole of community approach. We know that 50% of murders happen in only 12% of our police station areas. So it's really, really imperative that these areas are well resourced, that we have the right people in these areas, but that they also work with the communities in order to foster the trust the Minister has been speaking about, and to get accurate, workable plans. Because you don't treat domestic violence the same way as you do these armed robberies and carjackings and street robberies that occur daily in our communities.
Speaking of that, I mean, when you look at the fact that investigations found that the rapes, and particularly rapes, would normally happen with somebody that the victim trusted, like, a partner or a neighbor or an uncle, etc. But I just want to know from you, as the Institute of Security Studies, your thoughts about South Africa's security if we're seeing an increase in crimes such as kidnapping for anything. It doesn't matter if it was for a car or you want ransom. Kidnapping, isn't that also a state security issue?
It could be. It could well be. Many of these cases could be a state security issue because we're talking here about syndicates, whether it's transnational or local or a combination. We see them being involved in all sorts of the crimes we are talking about. The one thing that thrived during the strictest of COVID lockdowns were the organized crime syndicates. We saw them selling the cigarettes and the alcohol, and the police weren't there to stop this. I mean, these syndicates have proliferated, their markets have increased, and we are now, paying the price for it. We haven't seen the decreases in the robberies we were hoping to see. We haven't seen it in the transnational type crimes, whether it's drugs or guns. And these are the crimes that really, really give us, a bad reputation overseas, but shake our sense of security, every day. These are the crimes we fear the most. And I think we are often very quick to say we need plans, but do we have an organized crime approach that works on multiple stations across different departments to look at how to really dismantle these networks that are in place? There are great plans at a SADC level, but we need to really start focusing on our street gangs as well as our local syndicate gangs that will one day graduate to become these transnational gang members.
I remember interviewing a victim of crime, and she told me that the person who raped her told her that even though she goes and reports him to the police, all he'll have to do is give them enough money for them to let him go, and he'll be back. So that's how comfortable some of the criminals are about our own police. That's how our own police are being spoken about.
That's what the Minister also addressed when he said that we need to eradicate the corruption at a station level. The first thing these syndicates and organised crime members do is they see who they can bribe in the criminal justice system. If it's not the police, it could be the courts or both. Often it's not just bribery, but it's also through threats. So we need protection to different witnesses and to our law enforcement officers and prosecutors, but we also really need to be accountable. I mean, we know from just the annual reports that our disciplinary systems at station level are completely broken. We are not seeing accountability and consequence management, and that needs to be fixed as a matter of urgency.
Lizette, I know we've been speaking for a while, but this topic is something that, you can never finish. I heard you talking about, bribes all the way to the courts, the NPA, and that's the problem, right? People always blame police because they are our first point of reference when we experience a crime. You reported at the police station. But the line is long in terms of getting someone in jail. I mean, let me give you an example of a child, Mundla Mashiani, who will become part of the statistics, the next statistics that are released by the police minister for April and June, because she was killed by someone who was put on parole for the second time after committing worse crimes each time he was actually given parole. So now the issue actually goes deeper than just our police stations.
Absolutely. I mean, we're also looking at issues in the rollout of the DNA database. We're looking at delays with and problems in our forensic laboratories. So we are sitting with a systemic problem. It is across the board. We're looking at serious relationship problems and coordination between the police and the courts because, you know, it's hard. These cases are often not properly investigated. And then, you know, when they are referred back by the prosecutors for further investigation and to strengthen the chain of evidence and to wait for results, often those cases don't even make it back to court. So it is an entire system that needs reform and that needs consequence management. If you have oversight and if you have proper disciplinary and other type of actions, then we can start talking about a system that will work with, you know, more interventions, more boots on the ground, more resources. But until we don't fix the basics, that is wrong with detectives and such, we will have a problem. And I'm not saying that we don't have amazing law enforcement officers, police and prosecutors out there. I mean, I think they are working extraordinarily hard and achieving extraordinary results despite all these problems. And they need to be commended.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you very much for speaking to us here on All Angles. That was Lisette Lancaster. She's from the Institute for Security Studies. I think every time the crime stats are released, the NPA as well as correctional services should be standing side by side with the minister to answer some of the questions, because some of these criminals were in the hands of the NPA or correctional services themselves and they reoffend. So it's not just one department that should be answering to why this is happening in our country. Now,